So hi everyone. We're very excited to be here. It's really awesome to see so many familiar faces popping up in the chat, and yeah, a special shout out to all of our Cape Townians. Neither of us is in Cape Town anymore, but we still love you and we miss you guys. Yeah, so today we want to talk a bit about the utter shit show that has been COVID-19, and more importantly, what this pandemic can teach us about creating a more caring, inclusive, and equitable world. Little bit of disclaimers and housekeeping before we get started. Steve and I have mostly just been cooped up in our respective homes for months, so apologies in advance for any glitches, weird facial expressions, and probably lots of swearing that may slip out. As we've just discovered, presenting a talk online is super weird. We can't see any of you. We have no idea who's out there. So please feel free to use the chat. Keep adding comments. Send us some emoji love. It's really is sort of encouraging to know that there are humans on the other end of this strange crowdcast void. Also, we're going to be asking one or two questions to you or of you in the talk, and please use the chat for those answers. So we can save the ask a question Q&A feature for the sort of more formal questions after our talk. Also, we just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that you know, there's this other shit show happening in the States today. So if you are doomsday scrolling another tab following those results, please take a deep breath and don't forget to Google some cat videos today. That's important. And if Steve and I, or puppy videos, if Steve and I start crying at any point during our talk, it's to do with Agent Orange and that disaster. It's absolutely not to do with you guys or this conference. Right, Steve, over to you.
Yes, that's me. I'm Steve. And I'm also slightly losing my voice, so it's going to be extra fun. But the most important thing that we would like you to take away from this talk is that we can choose a more human-centered way of doing things. We can choose to act in a more human-centered way. We can choose to think in a more human-centered way. And maybe most importantly for us, we can choose to design in a more human-centered way. What we want to do is to look at some of the good, tiny good things that have come out of this shitstorm, the cool stuff that we did when faced with this giant COVID, and say, hey, we did something cool then, can we do something else cool as well? Nicola, who's driving the slides and will be co-author of Awkward Pauses, when we, or my awkward pause when I forget that it's my turn to speak. Nicola works as a product designer at Luno. She lives in Joburg, and the last thing that she made more human-centered was an interactive checkbox and note component. And this will be important in a moment.
And Steve is a front-end developer and UX person working at Toit. Steve actually lives in the future now by 11 hours in New Zealand. He has spent this year getting acquainted with earthquakes and yeah, amongst other sort of extreme geological features in his region. And the last thing that Steve made more human-centered was, I think, some input fields for forms.
True.
That's right, Steve. Cool.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. Quick question. This is the foreshadowing edition of Quick Question. What's the most recent thing that you've done, you watching us, that was human-centered? And we want you to put it in the text chat, please. Not the ask a question, just the regular chat. And so what we're thinking of here is something that's maybe like one step forward from user-centered, you know, not just about the personas or the categories of users that you think about, but something that was involving the actual human being using your product, you know, holding it in their hand or something like that. So we're going to kind of sit and be in awkward silence for a moment while hopefully some of you are helpful and throw something in there. It doesn't have to be something massive or like life-changing, just like, oh, I did this one cool thing. We don't have cool elevator music, unfortunately. We were talking about doing a beatbox, or Nicola was going to break out the cello, but apparently that got shut down. I mean, not shot down the cello, I mean, the idea got shut down. Aw, that's
yes.
Nice for.
Coffee for my family. That's very human-centered. Definitely. I ran the dishwasher in my house last night. Are there any
Okay.
designy sort of examples? Anything to do with like some really a nice juicy bit of research you did? Saying hi and meaning I see you. Yeah, very nice.
And by the way, this
go for it, Steve.
I was going to say this question idea is like a bit of an experiment, right? We were talking about doing a poll or like making some kind of cool chart or some shit, and then we decided, no, fuck it, let's just ask. Forget it. Let's just ask a question and see how it goes. Damn it!
There was first one.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
Accessibility testing. Coming in. You're my new favorite person.
Yay! Yes, the navigation experience. Awesome. Account recovery journeys. Oh yes, Tara. I know. Big shout out to my Lunauts as well, who were able to join us today. Nice. Changing a long form page sign up to Angular stepper forms. Very nice. Suggested what? Oh, turning the app upside down for this chat keeps jumping for capturing the pin. Very nice. Form features. Cool. Yay! Champagne popsicles. Lizette, I need the link. Send me details. Oh, Lindsay, that's great. Yes, listening to friends with empathy is very important. We're going to touch on that just now. And also doing heuristic reviews is very important. It's a really great way to help people understand how we can make stuff better. Yes, the concept of retirement lands in our emerging market. Nice. Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone. Some really great examples there. Yes, it worked. The quick question foreshadowing worked. Cool. Okay, so hopefully that gets you thinking a little bit in the human-centered frame of mind. So we are going to, this talk is basically in 3 sections. We want to start off talking a bit about what Steve and I have started calling the COVID switch, which we'll explain in a moment. And then we want to give a couple of examples of really quite positive stuff that's emerging from the flaming dumpster fire that has been 2020. And then we're going to put all of that together and look at how it can help us as designers.
So this COVID switch thing with scare quotes or just normal quotes, depending on how you're feeling. Something that's become kind of apparent is that COVID-19 has highlighted for more people like this much wider set of systemic and structural inequalities that exist in the world. And yes, we are both kind of angry feminists, but we're not going to kind of get into that too much. Of course, these big inequalities have been clear to lots of people for a very long time, the people that it affects. But what COVID has done for many people, it has grabbed some of these, shoved them right in their face and says, here's a piece of shit. You can't ignore this horrible thing. Do something about it, please.
So yeah, basically before this pandemic, there was a lot of stuff that seemed really impossible that we just kind of got used to. And then everything had to start changing really fast. Some stuff literally changed overnight. And we found all sorts of really creative workarounds to work our way through this very strange new world that we find ourselves in. It hasn't always been easy adapting and adjusting to all of these changes, especially when a lot of hectic stuff has dropped at once. But definitely some things have gone from can't be done to can be done this year. And it's turned out that humans can actually be surprisingly innovative, caring, and resourceful when we need to be, which is really awesome.
Nice. Thank you. And back to the studio. Thank you, Nicola. So one of the weird things about doing online presenting is like when you make a joke and nobody laughs, you can't tell. Normally when you're doing it in person, you can tell that no one's laughing. It's much better. Anyway, so that was the COVID switch. This kind of can't be done to can be done. Now we're going to run through a couple of examples and do this kind of before COVID, during COVID comparison so that we can see what is this human-centered angle that we think has actually come from some of this dumpster fire.
Cool. So the first thing that we want to talk about is access to healthcare and really public healthcare specifically. And I know we have some peeps from overseas on the call, but these examples are quite focused on our sort of South African experience here. So just bear with us if this is not directly relevant to you. But before COVID, most South Africans had to pay a lot of money to travel far and mission to get to their nearest clinic or public hospital. Then they'd have to queue for hours and hours in really crowded waiting rooms to see a doctor or even just a nurse for a checkup. Queuing with other sick people or injured people, like really not the best experience. And then, a lot of people also had to wait days or weeks for any test results, quite possibly have to mission back to the hospital a week later to fetch a script or pick up medication from a pharmacy. It was all kind of quite painfully analog and involved a lot of effort, which was not great. And what we've been seeing this year is that many medical services and a lot of information about healthcare has actually moved online, and a lot of it is free. So it's much more accessible to people. We have things like dial a doctor services where you can have a virtual phone call consultation, from the safety of your own home with a nurse or a GP if you need some advice. There's a lot of stuff that's gone online, not only about COVID, but also related illnesses. And we've got online symptom checkers, advice for caregivers, advice on how to disinfect your house if you've been infected. And we've got things like drive-through testing stations, a lot of which are free. And, so you can pull up in your car, you spend 5 minutes in a line, and you don't have to be exposed to anyone. It's a much quicker turnaround. And our testing facilities now, at least at this point in the year, are working much more efficiently. So we can get results within hours or 24 hours tops, and via text or WhatsApp. We've got a screenshot here of the Department of Health's whole online WhatsApp service, which was up and running within weeks of COVID kind of landing on our shores. And I think possibly shout out to Prekelt there. I don't know if anyone from Prekelt's on the call. But you can get news, the latest infection rates, advice, support, your test results, all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot more that's online, which means it's available to a lot more people, and it's much more easily available, which is really important. And it's free, which is the most important thing.
Nice. Example number 2, working from the home. So before COVID, quite a few of us had this kind of classic horrible kind of working kind of situation. Probably had a long commute to work, especially if you live in Joburg, or if you take a taxi anywhere. Yes.
I just need to point out, tiny sidebar, Cape Town's traffic is actually worse than Joburg's.
What? Okay, rest of talk cancelled.
Mind blown. Yeah. Mic drop, we're out. Sorry, carry on.
Oh wait, no, I live in New Zealand now. I don't mind. No, that's fine. I believe you. Shall I return to the home, or you? Yes, are we going to fight about this now,
yes.
Or
no,
fight about
go
it
on.
in the Q&A? Okay, cool. So before COVID, we had long commutes, many of us. The other thing was working hours. Must be Monday to Friday, must be 8 till 5 for some reason. And also, many of us, especially in our kind of industry and anything kind of techie or designy, we're in these like really cool open offices, open plan offices, which are busy and noisy and actually not that great for trying to concentrate and do any kind of deep work. Then that whole COVID thing happened, which again, total shitstorm, dumpster fire, nobody likes it. But was there any tiny good things that came from it? Well, you can't go to the office now, so no commuting. That seems like a bit of a plus. A bit more time around the edges of the day, not having to sit in horrible cars or cramped horrible taxis. You're in your house. Great. Also, many employers took the chance to have slightly more flexible hours. There's no reason why you can't start a bit earlier and finish a bit earlier, or have the morning away from the office to take the kids to school and back, or something like this, because, well, why not? All of a sudden this, it can't be done, it becomes can be done. One of the other big things is, of course, that which has its downside too, but your work environment is now your home, and importantly, it's an environment that's under your control. So anyone that has kids or family members who need primary care, or anyone with a disability, or anyone suffering from anxiety or depression, or even just anyone who's a bit or a lot introverted, all of a sudden the environment of your work is much more suited to you. You can adapt it to your personal needs. It's much more human-centered environment because you're a human and you're in your center. Okay, that didn't quite work. one of the things that has come about from this, sorry, I forgot to say, pajama pants. You can perhaps see in this slide a giant floofy thing, the dog, I mean, which is sitting on top of Nicola, which is her lap warmer and mascot. I am taken to understand that she is wearing pajama pants under there, but I'm pretty sure you'd be warm, even just in shorts. But enough about dogs. One of the things that this working from home has kind of pushed or enabled is gripping up a bit more tech, using tech a bit more usefully, in particular video calling, like for conferences. Things like MS Teams and Zoom all of a sudden have been a lot more active, had a lot more development and work done on them because so many people are using them. And it hasn't just been for work, right? We've used lots of these tools like the Zooms and the Skypes for connecting with friends and family. And often we're sitting at home, it's like, well, I have a shit ton of time now. Maybe I should chat to Auntie Susan, who I haven't talked to for 3 years for no good reason. And actually, she's really nice. I don't have an Auntie Susan. Just disclaimer there. Sorry, Auntie Susan. And a very big one that going online and that tech has enabled is schools. Lots of universities have kind of like maybe experimented a bit in the past with this kind of blended learning or trying a bit of online this or a bit of online that. But now, slap, no more lecture halls for you. Everything is online. So they found a way to make it work.
Cool. The last example, and I confess there were many. We could have done at least 10 of these, but we sort of whittled it down to the 3 that we felt were the most important. But the last one really has to do with, caring for our fellow human beings and coming together as communities. So before COVID, I think, a lot of us were really just too busy sitting in that shitty traffic and, being trapped in office parks from 8 to 5 to really get to know our neighbors or get involved in the good work that was happening in our communities and neighborhoods. Because we were all hustling so hard, we tended to be pretty focused on our own stuff. And we weren't always that great at taking collective responsibility for the well-being of other humans. And during COVID, we've really started to see that change. So friends and neighbors and even strangers have started supporting each other a lot more. There's a whole bunch of great examples. So, neighbors have been doing shopping for vulnerable people. People in my area have been planting pavement veggie gardens to help supply healthy food to folks who live around here. Many resourceful humans and communities, especially in underprivileged areas, have started their own soup kitchens and feeding schemes. Stores have special designated shopping hours for at-risk shoppers to do their shopping in a safer environment. We've seen people organizing drive-by birthday parties. There's even drive-by church services and confessions. And most importantly, every time we've all gone out wearing a mask and kept our distance from people and sanitized our hands for the 900th time in a day, we've literally been saving people's lives. I have a dad who's immune compromised, who's very high risk if he gets COVID. And so every single person, especially in Joburg where he's based, who's been taking care and being safe, has been helping to keep him safe, which means the world to me. So we are definitely getting better at self-organizing to help people in need, and we are definitely taking better collective responsibility for everyone's well-being, which is really pretty amazing.
Word. But just to kind of re-clarify, we're trying to talk about what are the positive aspects that have come from this, but just to reiterate and to confirm, yes, we do also believe that 2020 has been horrible, like epic levels of shite, not just like a bit shit, but super extra, very, very shit. Not just the COVID, but also as pictured here, the orange shit gibbon and on all kinds of other things. And even though we've tried to highlight some of the good things that have come as a consequence of this horrible COVID thing, the transition was very rough, right? Great, I get to work from home, except now I'm surrounded, if I'm sharing my house with 12 other people, it's also really noisy and not that great. And maybe my internet at home wasn't quite as fast as the office, so now everything takes a bit longer. And not just that, but it's a pandemic. It's kind of a mind floof. everyone is dealing with like extra stress and extra anxiety, and despite all of this additional connection, like extra loneliness, because it's weird, and humans aren't kind of designed to live in this weird kind of distant, spaced out kind of way. But what Nicola and I are thinking is like, well, maybe looking at all of the stuff that we've managed to do when we're forced to do, maybe we can take some good from this. Maybe it's time to reconsider, redesign, reorganize, and make something good come from this, make more good things come from this, and carry them forwards into the future like that.
So that brings us to the third part of our talk, which is really how can we learn from this as designers and use it in our work going forward. And yeah, so I think, basically what we've been seeing this year is that human beings are actually really good at being empathetic, flexible, and inclusive. And those three ideas are really at the core of human-centered thinking and human-centered ways of working. And, when we start to work in this way, building empathy, flexibility, and inclusivity into our processes, can't be done becomes can be done. Things that are unusable for some people can become really user-friendly. And instead of focusing just on designing a particular feature, we can start to design awesome experiences for real human beings.
So let's have a very quick look at each of those three things. So empathy, well, for example, we could do user research or more user research with the actual humans that we're designing for, the actual people using our stuff. We can understand a bit more deeply and maybe a bit more broadly, who they are, what they need, and how they interact with our stuff.
And if we're thinking about flexibility, we can try and build stuff that works for a wider range of technology. So not just the latest and greatest iPhone or the latest version of Android, whatever it might be. We can work on building products and services that work on small and big screens, feature phones and smartphones. We can design stuff that runs smoothly for people with slow internet connections or hectic data limitations. And we can also build stuff that works on older or slower devices or platforms. The only exception to that being Internet Explorer 6, which no one should ever be designing or testing for in 2020. And if you are, please do reach out to us. We will put you in touch with support groups. Cool. Steve.
And the last one in our little list, inclusivity. So, for example, accessibility. Yay! Nicola and I have a thing about this. One thing that we might consider doing is to have a look at what we've got and try and remove some barriers that might be blocking people from using our stuff. Some of the classic ones from the world of accessibility are low color contrast, tiny fonts, and things that aren't keyboard friendly, like tiny click or tap targets. One of the benefits of doing accessibility, of fixing things with a lens on accessibility, is that when you make it a bit better, for accessibility reasons, you actually make it a bit better for everyone. Like color contrast is an easy or perhaps straightforward way of looking at this. Like sure, having the right level of color contrast will help your users who have color blindness, for example, but it'll also help anyone who's on using like an older, crappier monitor where the colors aren't so good, or someone who's got a phone outside on a sunny day when it's a bit glary. That's it.
Cool. That brings us to our next question.
Panic. Quick question. Callback edition. I'm okay. I'm here. I've got it. The eagle-eyed among you may recognize this as a slight twist on the previous question. So, what is the next thing you could do in a more human-centered way? And again, please, which way is it that way? I think it's that way. Throw something into the chat for us, the text chat. Have a think about the next thing that you're going to start working on and what kind of tiny twist might you be able to make on it to make it a little bit more human-centered, or a lot more human-centered, but a little bit. And we'll sit here in silence for 3 minutes until we have 12 answers.
Steve, while we give everyone a moment to think about this and start popping some ideas into the chat, what's the next thing that you're going to do?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, tomorrow it's forms again, which is a bit boring, isn't it? But actually, forms are my favorite thing. I'm working with a team of backend developers who know front-end dev, but are very busy. So I'm going to find ways of helping them write more accessible front-end stuff, which is probably going to be something nerdy like making components for them and saying, hey, please use this. It's a gift for you.
Accessible gifts. I love it. Cool. Okay. Vaughan is going to revisit problem MVP deployments. Nice. Justin, talk to people more. Yeah, that's always a winner. Dion is going to design more for micro moments. Yes, I love that in customer and user experiences. Make sure inclusivity comes in early. Yes, as early as the user research phase. You're absolutely right, Kim. It's something to start thinking about really from the get-go. Making the design more accessible for people with special needs. Yes, George, that's awesome. Snack bars and form field error handling. Yes, hearing people's stories and what their challenges are and emailing users for feedback. Yeah, awesome. Facilitating a workshop with our finance team. Oh, yes, good luck with that, Lindsay. I have nothing against finance teams, but getting them, to look through that human-centered lens is really important work. Yes, and testing with screen readers. This is so easy to do these days. With Mac comes built in with VoiceOver, and yeah, there's all kinds of cool ways to start checking this stuff out. More targeted onboarding messaging. Yes, that's also really great. Brilliant.
Cool.
All right. Some really lovely ideas there. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Alrighty, just for time, I'm going to keep an eye on that chat, but I'm sorry about the delivery happening behind me. Working from home. so that sort of brings us to the end of our talk and almost the end of our time. So we just want to remind you, the most important thing to take away from our talk is that we can always choose to do things in a more human-centered way. Every little bit of design work that we do like this, even if it's something really small, like checking your color contrast or making sure that your images have alt text for screen readers, every bit of work like that is a step towards making the world more caring, more inclusive, and more equitable. And in this way, as designers, we are almost sort of undercover superheroes who can change the world for the better, one customer-centered interview and one pixel at a time. And if we think about all of the amazing stuff that we've managed to achieve in the face of COVID, the question is, what else can we do?
Nice. So, speaking of superheroes, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be a little bit better than yesterday. It was said by Leonie Watson. She is an accessibility engineer. She's on various kind of committees and thingies at the W3C, like the people who make the web. And she's a speaker at bunches of conferences, and she happens to be blind as well. So I kind of believe her when she says that if we want to do just a little bit change today to make it a little bit better, we don't have to fix all the things right now. I'm like, cool, thanks, Leonie. I'll take it. I'll try and make just a little bit better tomorrow. Thank you.
Some solid advice. And that is us. Thank you all very much. Iggy, I'm going to hand back to you, our timekeeper.
Thank you so much, guys. That's an absolutely phenomenal talk. Love the engagement. Just one thing I want to ask everybody, while we have a few seconds, to please post your questions in the Ask a Question section. I don't know if there'll be questions since you were asking questions through your session and everybody was answering.
If you have questions about our questions, you could ask that question, I guess.
I just want to ask questions about the floofy, but I mean, guys, if you have any questions, please post them. Yeah, absolutely, and thoroughly enjoyed that talk. And I think by the comments, you guys can also see that it was well received and really enjoyed. People are still cheering, people are still thanking. Doesn't look like there's any questions. Everybody's just happy. So I'll give it a few more seconds if no questions pop up. If we don't have any questions, or you guys feel that you have questions later, please reach out to Nicola and Steve. I mean, they're on LinkedIn. There's their Twitter handles. Yeah. Shall I feature Floofy? Yes.
Give me a minute. I'll be right back.
Just before we break. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
You all have a minute to think about questions. I'm going to get a dog.
I'm going to get a dog.
I also have a dog, but it's not floofy. Sorry, I can't deliver floof.
Any dog is welcome, Steve.
Ah, thank you. The people demand a floof.
Oh, look at that.
Hello.
Why don't we do this at every talk, Nicola?
Honestly,
Just
the
service
UX
animal.
community is the best.
Say that again.
I say this community is the
We
best.
should take baby all the time.
Yeah.
Hi, Bailey. So, guys, I'm going to call it. It doesn't look like there's any questions. I think you asked all your questions and everybody was happy, and